Hi, Neurofeedback moms. I am Miriam Bellamy. I am the mom who started this group, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am the director of Whole Family Neurofeedback. One of the many benefits of being a neurofeedback mom is that we bring you some of the world's leading experts on topics that you care about. So today, I am very happy to welcome Dr. Michele Borba. She's an educational psychologist. She is a sought after motivational speaker. She has spoken in 19 countries on 5 continents. You must love to be on an airplane.
Oh,
No?
no, but I love the people. It's getting
Yes.
off the airplane that's
That
exciting.
yes, that drives us. A consultant to hundreds of schools, corporations, including Sesame Street. She's a regular NBC contributor. She offers realistic, research-based advice called from a career working with over 1 million parents and educators worldwide. She lives in California. She has 3 grown sons. Before we get started with asking Michele questions, I want to invite you moms to ask your questions throughout the broadcast. I'm actually just going to keep track of them, and then once Dr. Borba's given a basic kind of presentation, then we'll dig into those questions. So please, at any time, throw them in the comments, and I'll make note of them. So welcome, Dr. Borba. Really appreciate you being here.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
I can already tell this is going to be fun. We had some fun backstage, which is why we're a little late, but that's okay. Who cares?
It was fun, is right. And boy, do we need fun, right?
Yes, yes, amen to that. So let's start with me asking you, where did you get your start in this? And before I go too far, she is the author of Unselfie, talking about empathy in this generation that we're raising, and then she's just come out with the book called Thrivers. You can see there in the top banner, Raising Thrivers. We're going to be talking about that today. How did you get your start in this work?
101 was my best thing in the entire thing I ever did was become a special education teacher. I learned more about what kids need from those students and their parents than I did in any textbook I ever read. I got my master's in learning disabilities, then I went out and got my doctorate in educational psychology and counseling. And I've always been wondering one question, and that was, why do some kids struggle and others thrive? So the most amazing thing is I graduated from Santa Clara University, but UC Davis was where I really got the beginning of it all, because there was an incredible researcher named Amy Werner. And what she did was to look at cohorts of children who were facing extreme adversity. We're talking sexual abuse, poverty, war zones, homelessness. And she kept looking at the same kids for 40 years. And she found that lo and behold, many of them were thriving despite the adversity. Once I saw that, and other science that says resilience is learned, they're not born with it, it's not locked into your DNA. It's been 40 years of writing Thrivers to figure out which traits matter most and what we can do to help all kids thrive. And the best news is this is teachable. It's simple. It doesn't take a tutor or a program. It's just weaving it into daily family lessons, experiences, chances. We just need a roadmap.
Okay, wonderful. So you have a graphic here. Do you want me to switch to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd love you to switch to it just so you can all see, moms, that what I began to look at was which are the strengths that are teachable, that seem to matter most in children's resilience as well as mental health needs. And I found something that was fascinating. Of all the research, and dozens of pieces have come out, 7 traits seem to matter most. So I just like to take a moment to share them with you. Each chapter in Thrivers is one of those 7 traits, but it has also dozens of why you need to teach it and the strategies you can use. Self-confidence, I think, is the bulk that most of you are looking at right now. I've been doing focus groups with kids across, in fact, I just got back from Abu Dhabi, and tomorrow I'm speaking with Africa. But no matter where I am, many of the kids are saying that the trait that seems to be the one that they're nosediving right now is confidence. And that would make sense, because when you've spent 2 years of wondering what the heck is going on, and you've been pacing and really taking all of your accolades based on your GPA, and all of a sudden that trundles, what are you going to do? So the piece that I think is really important is to maybe take this week and look a little closely at your children. Look at which things they seem to be more interested in, what drives them, what gives them passion, when are they a little more eager. And what we discover is that, back to Emmy Werner, is that children who are resilient almost always have a hobby. They have something they can backlog on and it helps them decompress. I think we overlook that. I surveyed a lot of kids asking them, "What's your hobby?" And then looked at me dumbfounded. Who's got time for a hobby? It makes no difference what the hobby is. And don't go raising a white flag and feeling guilty if your kid doesn't have one. Now is the time to start introducing them. You could really simply say, okay, this week, oh, we're going to do baking, or next week, we're going to do some knitting, or the following week, let's listen to music. See what gravitates around your child. That's the key. Let me give you one story that, as my special ed background 101, I had one little guy in my classroom. You always have a child that till your dying day, you'll never forget this kid. And mine was Michael. I taught up in Northern California, and this child was in my room with severe learning disabilities. He also had a tough home life, but he also had apparently a very high IQ. And it was not materializing in the classroom at all. His confidence level was just tanking. So I kept looking for, what is this kid good at? He was around 6 at the time. I couldn't find anything. And here's the thing, when a child is so low in confidence, if you find that thing that he's good at, watch out, because chances are he'll rip it up and he won't buy into it. You have to be slow in helping a child begin to understand, here's your strengths. Strengths are what's going to help you sustain you. So one day, Michael forgot to cover up the fact he was artistic, or that he liked to draw. And here's my point to you. I decided to keep my mouth shut, because if I'd said, "Wow, Michael, you're really good at that," I know he would have covered it up, because he was so low in it, in that feeling of I'm good at anything. But it was also my moment, your moment, Mom, to be able to start looking to see where are some other ways that I could help this kid shine or show that particular strength. And so I'm not so good at art. I had other moms come in and do some little lessons. I had particular moments for him to, and all the rest of the kids to do a little more art. And then it was several weeks later, never ever happens overnight. He forgot to cover up the fact he was artistic and loved it. I happened to walk by and quietly leaned down and said, "Michael, that's really good. You seem so happy at it. Do you mind if I put it on the good work board?" I always ask permission. And I put it on the good work board, and I'll never forget it, because 3 of the kids walked over to the board, looked at the art, and turned and said, "Wow, Michael, you're really good at art." The shine on that kid's face was just extraordinary. And what began to happen is he showed the skill a little more. But here's the other pieces along the way.
Okay.
First, it took a long time. New behaviors take a minimum of 21 days. Number two, you got to give him concrete ways to slowly start just experiencing his stress and his strengths and not his weaknesses. Third is, I passed it on to other people. I'd have a conference with the mom and tell them, this is what your kid is good at. If any other teacher saw that child's, I'd say, Michael's really good at art. And then you lose them as the teacher. They go on to the next class, the next class, the next class, but I'll never forget it, because he went on to middle school. And at that time, he was winning some art competitions. And then you don't know what happens. Here's my one moment in my entire career that said, "Wow, Michele, I'm so glad you were a teacher." That's like the pat on the back. I got a letter from him years later, and it just said, "Dear Mrs. Borba, I just wanted you to know I graduated from high school." I literally almost fell to the ground, because I didn't know that that was a possibility. And then he said, and I got a scholarship to college. I'm doing exactly what I always wanted to do. I got it in art, but I also wanted you to know that I'm working for Disney Studios as an animator, and I owe it to you, because you put my work on the good work board. So my point to you is, don't give up on the strengths. Don't give up on the strengths. Find what your child is good at. That's the beginning to thriving. The rest will come.
So part of what I'm taking from that is really watch this praising thing, right?
Yeah.
You can just, if I heard you right, you can't just sort of jump on this thing. Even a child without autism is going to be like, maybe have some kind of reaction to that. Am I hearing you right?
Yes, I am. You have to be very careful with it. We also learned that Ohio State did a really interesting study that said it's overrated. We have gotten on the self-esteem bandwagon that
Yes.
says if we just praise them, praise them, praise them, praise them, the rest will come and always will be well. No, it doesn't. It just backfires, and it makes the kid very often more self-absorbed or needing our praise. So they rely on us. Thrivers are made, not born, and they almost always have agency. I got this. They're not relying on, do I get a
Yeah.
trophy for it?
Right.
But a couple of other things you can do is you want to, when it comes to confidence, slowly help the child begin to acknowledge or at least be aware of his or her strengths, accept the weaknesses because they're also part of life. But
You
another
bet.
thing you can do is called earshot praise. So what you do is your husband comes home and you recognize a natural, real strength about the child. You turn without knowing that the child is there. He really is, and you know it. But you start praising the child to the husband. Hey, you should see Ned's art ability. He's absolutely amazing. You would be so impressed with it. Ignore it, pretend he doesn't exist. And what happens is it quadruples the praise. So little nuggets along the way. The other thing is awareness of strengths take a while. So you have to keep building them and building them. And it's not a strength that is one that you are passionate about yourself. It's who your child is. That's very often the real stumbling block that realize, oh my gosh, that's not something I'm into. So what? This is the part of being bad of being a parent. Find what ignites your child's passion.
So, what do you think sort of gets in the way of parents sort of letting their child or figuring that out in their child or seeing who their child is versus what they want them to be?
I think that our culture has become so competitive. We're so into
Okay.
education and push, push, push that it has to be what everybody else does. We worry about what the other child is doing. When in reality, we now know that if we really want to help the child, it doesn't mean you're going to stop with just the confidence level. But what I discovered on those 7 traits, for instance, that
Mhm.
confidence has a multiplier effect. If you start with at least knowing what you're good at or one thing that gives you kind of you allows you to decompress when push comes to shove, then you add another strength level or another. What actually happens is any 2 strengths multiply just one. What we also have been doing wrong, I think, is just going for, well, he just needs hope or he just needs self control. When in reality, any 2 of those multiply the outcome and become like superpowers to your child. So, what you could do in Thrivers, for instance, is there is a 4-page core asset survey of 150 strengths, like learning styles or modalities or verbal abilities or multiple intelligences. There you go. You can also get your own copy right there that Miriam will give you a copy of
Yeah.
free. I just did this one. I'm going Dr. Phil on Friday. And what we did is we had a mom and her son that were really in a friction with each other. But I said, you've got to stop not pointing out all his weaknesses. Start figuring out what he's good at. I could see instantly what happened was when the son, who was a teen, did his version of it. And then when mom did her version of it, they only agreed on 5 strengths. I've never seen anything so low. So
So
it
so you're
was,
saying they
let's
each did this core asset survey and only
on
agreed
them.
on 5. Okay. So
Yes,
that's
mom
a
did it on her son, son
okay.
did it on himself. Then we put
Okay.
them together. That could be another option that you do, depending on the developmental level of the child.
Mhm.
Everything is based on the child's level and where you want to go from there.
Mhm.
But we
Mhm.
need a starter point.
Yeah, when I was looking at it, I was sort of thinking I should have my husband fill this out for me or me for him, you know?
I don't have the confidence to do that, Miriam. That's really good.
Yes. And I was also because
Oh
I've been a
gosh.
marriage therapist and family therapist for almost
Yeah,
25 years and sort of thinking about what does get in the way of parents being able to see their kids. I think also family stressors like marriage stress, right? So I
sure.
was talking to a mom about a month or so ago where she was doing something with her child. It sounded really smart and really well done, but all of a sudden she's posting. It's like, did I do the right thing? She was really unsure, and I knew because of my experience. And there was a piece of her story that got her husband involved, or whatever. That he came in that when our husbands get anxious about our kids, they come in and say, I don't know, should you be doing that or this or whatever, and then we get anxious and then we doubt what we're doing with our kiddos. So
Exactly. 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 Well, it's a high stress job, this thing called parenting, because
oh
we
my
want to
lord.
do it
The,
right. So I know, isn't it? It's like, and we just got piled and piled and piled onto more and more things we were supposed to do. That's the first reason why I wrote Thrivers, is I wanted to just
Okay.
look at what the science says are the simplest things we should be tuning into to
Okay.
maximize our results. That is really clearly evidence based. So I think that's core. The other thing you pointed out is a really interesting point. Too often we react and not respond.
Yeah.
So if we can really figure out, what is our new game plan, and don't add
Hmm.
too much to the plate, just one little thing,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
pass it on to maybe grandma or the teacher. If we
Yes.
all do the same little thing and we're all reinforcing the same little thing, we're going to maximize the results and change the results a lot faster. Sometimes it's 21 days and sometimes it's 7 years. It's however long it takes
Yeah.
of what you think is going to matter for your child.
I love that you brought grandma in, because it might not be our husband or our wife. It might be our mother
Exactly.
or our father coming in and making comments that I'm sure, they don't mean to make us anxious, but anxiety flows through the system. So,
Yeah, doesn't it ever?
yes, it does. Let me think about this. I wanted to ask you, um, talk to me a little bit about, um, well, your book Unselfie, where you really sort of talk about empathy. As a family therapist, I do work primarily with adults. I see, for example, too much empathy in women who tend to get really, really sensitized and in tune with everybody else's pain. Can you speak to that when we're
Yeah,
encouraging empathy?
yeah.
Yeah, talk about that.
Well, it's also with kids. Highly empathetic kids, we have got to give them permission to step back. You can't
Okay.
solve the world's crisis, sweetie pie. And so that's a piece of it. Notice that that's the second trait, because social competence plays a huge piece in mental health, in resilience. And now what we know, as Emmy Werner would say, social competence also plays a huge role in helping kids bounce back. And what's happening right now with all the physical distancing, many of our children, I don't know about any listeners here, their kids are feeling a little more social anxious. They're feeling a little more separation anxiety. So, key number one is parents. And here's what we know about empathy: we're hardwired for it and we need it desperately. But when stress builds and we don't have a way to manage that stress level, what happens is we have to dial our own empathy down. And if we don't, burnout is the outcome. So, one piece of this, Miriam, is burnout has hit us all, because
You bet.
the things that we needed most was the person next door or our girlfriends or somebody to be networking with is not there. The
Hmm.
second thing is we are seeing such dismal news, and our heart is breaking. I mean, if you watch the war zones, what's going on in Ukraine, after a
Yeah.
while, it's like you just are sobbing
Yeah.
yourselves. So the second thing is you got to be careful, because you've got to turn that off so that you can be in control with your own children. Third thing that I love is what you also said.
Hmm.
There's some of us out there that are highly empathetic. And
Yeah.
if you're not careful, you try to take on the world.
Hmm.
And the best comeback I ever saw with that was Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa said, Miss Empathy 101, if I kept looking at all those photos of the starving children, I would never be able to think or work. So, what I don't do anymore is look at the masses. I just look to one, and I try to solve and help the one. If we put that maybe as our perspective, I can't do it all, but I'm just going to go right now with my family or that one child. It'll help give perspective so that we have more compassion for ourselves. And that's
Mm.
what we need right now, is self-compassion to manage the stress so it
Mm.
doesn't spill over to our kids. The new research is saying that our stress is higher than our children's right now. So,
Okay.
and rightly so,
Okay.
rightly so. So
Hmm.
let's look at and realize that's also going to impact not only our job performance, our relationships, but also our parenting.
So I have a child. I'm going to get some personal advice here. I have a child who's almost 18 and super empathetic and sensitive and that kind of thing. She's very worried about other people's feelings. She says I'm sorry a lot. It gets a little annoying. What do you say to a child who's that, well, you were saying, you got to turn it off. How would you help a child, even an older child, turn
One,
it off?
yeah, one thing that I've discovered, that it's actually a term called altruistic suffering. That is one of the best things for your daughter. And that is when she sees someone's pain, She takes it in. Oh, how glorious that she does. But if she keeps taking it in and keeps taking it in, it can be overwhelming to her. So, what I've seen that many teens are now doing is finally realizing I can't keep taking it in, so I'm going to give it back. And instead of getting, if you give back, it's the best stress reducer there is. Example, a group of kids from Glenbard High School got so concerned about some of their friends who said, during social distancing, they couldn't see the person they needed most with their own mental health needs, which is a school counselor. And they were really worried about those friends of theirs. So, what they did is they put together a little chain of here's the kids we worry about. And then we kept social distancing, Dr. Borba, but we did it all in our own homes. One of us figured out they went to their strengths. What is each of us good at? I'm good at baking cookies. I'm good at writing a note. I'm really good at decorating a card. So what they did is that every day they made a driveway drop-off bag. One kid would drive it off, the other kid would bake the cookies, the other kid would write the handwritten note to the child, and every day it was to a different child. And I said, how's it going? They said, it's absolutely unbelievable. We were so stressed and worried about our friends. But now what happens is every single day, the kid we drove and dropped it off to calls us sobbing and thanking us because they didn't think that anybody cared. And now we sob and we got to do it again. It's the best thing that we ever could have done is helping somebody else because it helps us too.
Yeah, you kind of get out of your
So it's
own
get
world
out of your own
and
thing.
get into the world. Yeah, go ahead.
Now the key is that you got to do stuff that is meaningful to the child and age
Okay.
related to the child, not going to look good on a college resume. So example, we got another kid who was really came home really worried about the neighbors next door. And bless the mother because she said, well, what are you worried about? I'm worried she's all by herself. She's 80, mom. She's really lonely. And then the mother said the best question ever, what can you do? What can you do to help her? And you realize she used to love the Christmas cookies that we dropped off. So why don't we bake some more Christmas cookies, mom? But even now we could do it like spring cookies. Good idea. And the child dropped it off. The response was unbelievable because when the lady opened the door, the tears of joy, the child said, we got to go make some more cookies, mom. Maybe the other neighbors need it too. The mom said it was such a relief to that child and it helped him realize he could do good. That's building that identity into a child. That confidence level is also piece and parcel because now when he knows that he did good, his agency goes up. He's got his confidence level moving up. And it could be simple little things like all the kids during COVID who the teens that got worried about their younger brothers and sisters. So they made sidewalk chalk drawings all over. And pretty soon they had half the kids in the neighborhood joining in and doing sidewalk chalk drawings. But they said it made us feel good just as much as it made our 5-year-old brothers and sisters feel good. So we got to keep doing it.
Nice. So I want to go
Yeah.
back to something you said just real quick. So I'm going to share the screen one more time. These are these core strengths, character strengths that can be trained. Did I hear you right where you said if you develop two of them, that there's kind of a cascade effect?
Any two has a multiplier effect. So it,
Multiplier.
and
Okay.
by the way, it makes no difference what order it is. The next question to any mother, oh my gosh, does he need all seven? No, it's a rare adult that has all seven. But if you look at those as your roadmap for the rest of your life, because that's how long it's going to take, it just keeps going and going and going. And the other thing is you've got to make it so whatever those seven are, you may want to start with which does my child currently have? Or the next thing is which is ones are my strengths because you're more likely to be modeling them yourself. And then you take it so that you don't make any assumptions. Let's go to empathy a minute because one piece of empathy we know is that emotional literacy is the gateway to it. Kids have to be able to either identify emotions in themselves or others. And I remember being in Ohio when I was doing a book signing for Thrivers, and some teens came to me. And one kid, he must have been about 15, who was autistic and standing in front of me, wanted a book signed. And I was like, wow. I said, how did you like the speech? And he said, oh gosh, it was so good. I said, what made it so good? He said, wait a minute, it's coming. I said, what's coming? And all of a sudden, you saw him start to break out. He said, it's a joy bubble. I can feel it. I can feel it. I can feel it. And then he completely broke down and started to cry. His mom and dad smiled and he said, I just felt so good. So
Aw.
it was his parents had discovered that that was the terms that he used. How wonderful. And he was able to tell them what his emotions were based on it feels like a joy bubble.
Mm, mm, nice.
Whatever it is, we got to
Yeah.
make it so it's developmentally or just appropriate to that age of the child. And maybe
And
start talking emotions far more in our own family. We do a better job, by the way, with our daughters at age 2 than we do with our sons at age 2.
okay. Is
We
there a optimal age to talk to boys about
No,
emotions?
the optimal age is started at age 2. We just
Oh,
don't
oh.
talk to them. What Yale's
Oh.
did this, they put us in front Guilt 101, here we go again. But they put us in front of two-way mirrors and they watched moms with 2-year-old daughters with
Mm.
2-year-old sons. And they found that of the two, we talk emotions far more with our daughters. Oh, you look so happy, oh so sad, oh so proud. With boys,
Ah.
boys don't cry. You're not going to lose you're going to lose your friend if you do that. And there's already by the age of 5 a pink blue divide in terms of emotion
Wow.
language and identification. So talk emotions
Wow.
naturally. As
Mhm.
your puppy, start with a puppy. How does Fido feel? I look happy because his tail is going up and down. Or with a baby. The best program I've ever seen in my life is Roots of Empathy, that actually uses babies to come into classrooms once a month. And they use the baby, the kids adopt the baby for the year. Here's
Mm.
Clara every month to watch the emotional progression off of a baby's. How wonderful is that?
Oh my
The
lord.
kids
What's the
look to
name
me
of
like
that program?
eh, roots of empathy. It's absolutely mind boggling. It's one of the, each chapter in Thrivers has a story that is just extraordinary that I've seen someplace in the world. But
Wow.
800,000 kids have been exposed to the program. It's by Mary Gordon. And what happens is that bullying goes down, inclusion goes up, emotional literacy goes up, and empathy goes up. It's one baby all year long. Every month, the baby comes in. The little kid said, when the baby comes in and sits down, and the teacher says, how does Clara seem to feel today? And the kids could read her language.
Wow.
And then they
Okay.
turned to me and said, Clara's learning empathy. I turned to the kid and said, I don't think it's just Clara. So it was the kids learning it. It was lovely,
I
but
love
it
it.
was concrete.
Yeah, and so speaking of concrete, I mean, so let's go ahead and just wrap up for today, and with this idea of this core asset survey, because as you said, as for a mom to just, or a dad who might be listening, to begin to think about these 7 traits. Should I call them traits?
You're
Strength,
usually strengths.
strengths. Okay, yeah, trait would sound like it's not teachable, like it's inborn, right?
Yeah, yeah, right.
7 teachable
These are
strengths,
teachable.
and
At
really
any age,
assessing.
they're teachable.
Yes, yes, and assessing where your child is now, where you are now, where your spouse might be now, and building from there, and keeping it simple, and
Love that. Keep it simple. There's also a guide at the very beginning that you can do a quick little test if you wanted to. Or once you get to know those 7 traits, by the way, I would never read the whole book at one slog. I would slowly
okay.
just keep reading, maybe one chapter at a time. And then each chapter is going to have dozens of ways to teach it age by age. So
Oh
find
wow.
one thing you like,
Mm,
one thing,
mm,
teach it to yourself, and
mm-hmm,
then teach it to your kids, and then keep
mm-hmm,
practicing and practicing and practicing in those
mm-hmm,
everyday moments till your kids can do it without you. Then add the next and the next.
mm-hmm. That slow, steady effort, that is parenting. Yeah.
Isn't that
Thank
it?
you. Thank you so much for
You're
being with
welcome.
us. Great, great to be
You're
with you today.
welcome.
All right. Thanks, moms, and we will see you next time.